This is Michael Anthony right here, and you are watching Exclusively Van Halen on the Johnny Beane TV. Keep it there. Woo! See ya!
Hey,
how about you now? Hey, Johnny Beane, exclusively Van Halen on the Johnny Beane TV show. This is Zeke Clark, and I'm really quite honored to be on your show and talk about this auction that is currently going on regarding some of my collectibles that I've collected over the years. And
some awesome stuff, man.
Yes, it is. It's some stuff, like I say, it's 50 years of touring. And, like any average guitar guy, you just pick up knickknacks, throughout all the bands you worked with. It could be T-shirts, jackets, picks, photographs, media stuff, so on and so forth, I've been very, very, very blessed to have worked with so many A-list artists over this 50 years, and especially working with Eddie Van Halen, and Sammy Hagar and Alex and Mikey, I mean, that is like, I'm sure that's been everybody's dream during Van Halen. That anybody wished they had my job, So I'm very fortunate and very blessed to have been there and got the opportunity to work with those guys. Just an outstanding band, I mean, for me, it was just completely off the charts. I mean, the things I seen, things I heard, things that we're a part of, memories that I'll carry for the rest of my life. When you think about, just for example, the band itself, you look at the great, everybody goes, Eddie Van Halen, such a great guitar player and innovator of technique and delivery and making songs and all that stuff. But you got to look too at Alex. I mean, without Alex Van Halen, who basically fueled Eddie to be this creative, I think Alex deserves a lot more credit than he's gotten over the years, because those guys were I mean, brothers, they fed off each other. And I could imagine what Eddie would have came up with if he didn't have his brother Alex on that drum set,
Yeah, they definitely the creativity between the two was just magic.
Yes, and it's people, I don't know if they zero in when they're listening to, say, Van Halen's music, if they just zero in or paying attention to Eddie, his playing, his technique, and trying to figure out how to do Eddie's parts, on guitar or whatever. But what people should really focus in on is just how much of a powerhouse that Alex Van Halen is. His tones and his attack and his writing too. He's writing on that drum set, just like Eddie's writing on the guitar, and he's just coming up with just these incredible riffs, and and I can see it as he's laying that stuff down. I can see the excitement in Eddie, and Eddie's playing off it, And so that's a real important thing to have these Van Halen fans out there understand. It's, when you think of Van Halen, everybody just thinks Eddie Van Halen. No, it's more than that. It's Alex was just as awesome as Eddie, and his talent
Mm-hmm.
on that drum set. I mean, when you look at people like in the past, I admired like John Bonham and Keith Moon, and of course Buddy Rich or Neil Peart or Danny Carey or Jeff Porcaro, or some of those people that are outstanding drummers as well. But nobody seemed to. I'm trying to think of who Alex's snare tone comes the closest to, and I possibly might say maybe John Bonham, possibly, but then again, he was unique in his own self, his own tone.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just remarkable. I mean, if you just heard a start of a song before any of the band kicked in and just heard a couple of drum licks, you know right off the bat that's Alex Van Halen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and then you toss in Mike Anthony on bass that locks in as the backbone with Alex. Tremendous bass player, outstanding vocalist. His part was vital to the success of that band as well.
Oh yeah.
And it's like magic. So you got those three guys providing the music, and then you throw in Hagar, which is an outstanding frontman, outstanding songwriter, uh, great performer. There's nobody quite like Sammy. I mean, Sammy's all over the place up there on that deck, and he really knows how to control a crowd and
Mm-hmm.
entertain, and then he's throwing down these amazing vocals on top of all this stuff that these guys have created, this music they've created together as a whole. And then you throw in his guitar playing too. Sammy has some pretty good chops. He could hang 10 with Eddie any day. You know, and they used to just thrive off of one another. Play off of one another, and come up with the ideas together, and in writing the songs, and throwing down a lick here. Sammy might go, let's try this lick. How about this lick? You know what I mean? And he would be
Mm-hmm.
like throwing back with like, like his tapping technique, or whatever, or taking it here or there, and just building off of one another. So to be able to see that, man, it's just like it was some of the greatest moments of my life. It was just off the charts. Outstanding band. I mean, don't you think so? Don't you think that band is a outstanding band, Johnny?
Oh, I grew up on that band, and it
Well,
was.
like I say, I'm glad that you had the opportunity to grow up and listen to them. And I don't know what the kids are growing up today and listening to. I can't really make any sense of it. Nothing's really catching my eye, really.
Mm-hmm.
The time frame where I grew up, there was just, to me, it was like the greatest time in rock and roll music. When you got like, you got the Beach Boys, you got the Rolling Stones, you got Jimmy Page, you got Led Zeppelin, Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, uh, on and on and on. Journey. There are all kinds of great bands, rock and roll bands that that you could say, "Oh, that's a great band." I can remember five or six of their songs, or identify them, hearing them on the radio right off the bat. Toward today, I don't know who anybody is, and nothing really grabs me. Nothing really stays with me. Although
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, because I just, in my car, if I'm driving, I got the radio on. I'm flipping around the channels, usually between rock and country, and
Mm-hmm.
these people in rock today, I don't get it. Nothing really grabs me like, oh man, what was that song?
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years back when I was worked with Kenny Chesney, I did 14 years with him, and I remember Tom Nyson, their stage manager, great guy, right? I'm from Michigan and he's from Michigan too, Detroit area. We're a couple of Detroit boys. But he told me about this band. Oh, Zeke, man, I got you a new rock and roll band that you're gonna testify to. I said, oh yeah, Tom, who is it? He'd say, band called Greta Van Fleet. And I don't know if you've heard of that band or not. So he played me a couple cuts off of Greta Van Fleet, and I was going like, now that's what I'm talking about. Pretty much, it sounded like Led Zeppelin-ish,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of a feel. But I thought it was the songs were creative, very well done, and it was just like, oh, that band's going somewhere. I'm telling you right now, I'd put my money down on them any day. But anywho, uh,
Cool.
moving along. Sometimes I'll just go off in the left field there, so you might have to knock me around a little bit there, Johnny, and get me back on track if I get too far out in left field. But anyway, so we're going to be talking today about this backstage auction place.
Mm-hmm.
And a good friend of mine, Keenan Neighbors, and a few other friends, Dion Edge, and all that stuff. They kind of followed this auction when they were dealing with some of Ed's guitars, Alex's drum set, all of Alex's awards, so on and so forth, as a reputable outfit. Somebody that I'd want to reach out to and connect with through the recommendations. And so I did, and I kind of went through. I've got so much stuff I've collected that I don't know what I'm going to do with. It's too much. I've got, I mean, too much. It's laying everywhere in every room of the garage is full. Every place is full of all this stuff. I used to have it in a storage locker, but it got broken into, and a lot of the stuff got stolen. That eventually I was able to recover. Uh, but anyway, like I say, at my age, I said I don't need, 12 to 14 full Marshall stacks, or I don't need 24 Marshall heads. I don't need all these boutique amps I've got. I've got probably 150 guitars, uh, just
Wow.
loads of like merchandise, T-shirts, jackets, uh, all kinds of knickknacks. And so it's just like I figured it's time for me to just cut loose, start letting go. Almost felt like a hoarder. I don't know if you've ever seen that show or not, where my place is nothing like that. But it's just too much. There's no place to put nothing else. There isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of space as my son's growing. Of course, he wants a new bicycle, or he wants this or that, or he says, when do I get to use the garage to practice roller skating or to do this? When are you going to move all the stuff out of here? So it just got me to think. What? It's time. Family's the most important thing, and it's time to just let this stuff go that's been very dear to me. And it's hard. It's very, very, very hard, because there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
memories with each little item, believe it or not. It kind of
Oh
reminds
yeah.
me, takes me back to the time. But anywho, so let's go ahead here, and you'll see at the beginning, you'll see like I don't know, let me see if I can figure out how to scroll on my computer. I'm not as sharp as a pencil when it comes to this stuff. Now, why is it scrolling for? Okay, there it is. So let's just see how many total. It looks like what we've got here, if we just look at Marshall stuff. So let's see, scroll back at one cabinet, two cabinets, three cabinets, four cabinets. So there's a total of four cabinets. and one, two, looks
Three
like
heads.
three Marshall heads. Now, basically, here's the situation on how these came to be. When we set up for one thing that Edward had me do after I built him his guitars and all that sort of stuff, and he had me work with Jose Arredondo, and he just lived there in Van Nuys. Oh, maybe a 10-minute drive, right off of Ventura Boulevard and Van Nuys Boulevard, over in that general area. And so if Ed had one main head that he used in the studio, and if something would go wrong, if it starts sounding a little weird to him, and his ear was really, really, really good, uh, and he'd say, "Hey, run this over to Jose's and have him check it out." And then for a backup head that he had at the house, it just wasn't even anything close to it, because of for touring, all of those heads that were similar that Jose had went through in the beginning. We had these flag cabinets that held two Marshall heads in each rack. I think we had like five of them, five or six of them out there. So I was carrying on tour 12 heads. And so Ed says, we need to have some other heads around here, so you don't have to go all the way to the storage locker in Burbank where we stored the gear for tour, and then try to dig out a head when that situation occurred. So what I would do then is I would like call around, the LA area, and see if I could find any JMPs in 50s or 100s that were not working, that where the magic smoke had come out of them at some point, and the pawn shops or the used guitar stores or whatever, I would get a good buy on them. You know what I mean? Like, I can't remember what I'd pay, but it wouldn't be that much, So then I would take those heads over to Jose's, and we'd like fix them up together. I don't know if we had to replace a choke on them, or say a output transformer, or if they needed tubes or a tube socket, or there might have been a blown cap here or there, or just to replace the parts and get them back into a stock mode with a little bit of flavor on it. Like I say, if usually in a circuit board there might be, a couple burnt resistors or whatever. They might be in quarter watt version of a certain value resistor, and we'd take that out, and we'd put in, like, say, a half watt to a watt resistor that just gives you a little bit more oomph, and it actually create a little bit more brownness, if that makes any sense to you. So anyways, when we'd get them done, then of course I'd bring them back to Ed's house there, and he wanted to play through them, set them up in the studio. Let's just see what you got. Let's see what you guys figured out. And he first would play through them just as they were repaired, and just to see what kind of tonality he could get out of them. And then from there, what we would do is I would pull the chassis out of the head box there, and then put the amplifier, plug it into what they call a variac, which is it looks like a giant round. Here, hold on a second. I've got one right in the garage. Should I grab it so I can show you what I'm talking about, or not? Is it relevant or not? All right.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Just bear with me for a second. Which means variable AC, right? And then you could
cool.
plug your Situ-Y in there, and then you can dial up the voltage you want to run that head on. Here, let me set this down. This thing weighs about 60 pounds. Son of a gun. Uh, I'm too old for that stuff. So, anyways, back to the story. So, what I would do when I had the chassis out, I'd have a couple blocks of wood where I could flip it upside down, plug it into the variac, and turn it on, turn the variac on, and I'd lower the voltage. I'd start off with about 118 volts. Then I'd lower the voltage to about 98 volts. And then by doing that, then I could take and with a screwdriver go inside of the bottom that's opened up of the chassis, and I could adjust what's called a bias. So I could increase the bias running the head at a lower voltage so I can jack the bias up, which made the amplifier sound warmer, more what I call browner. And so
Yeah.
then we'd have Edward, once I got it set up, he'd say, hey, put it up, run it through the variac. And so he'd be in doing something or whatever. And then he'd come back out and I say, it's all ready to go. So then he'd plug into it and blow through it and full with the tone controls. And usually what he would do right off the bat is just turn everything on 10 or 11, whatever you want to call it. I don't know why I keep on saying 11. I think that was something from Spinal Tap, or I thought it
Yeah.
sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
Uh, but if people asked me about his heads, I said, oh, yeah, they all go to 11, you know, just as kind of a play on things there, whether they got it. Go, well, my amp only goes to 10. What model do you have? And I just kind of fooling with them.
Mm-hmm.
So then Ed would play through them, and he would just they'd sit in place, and he said, okay, I got an idea in this one, and he'd say, put a number on it. I guess
Mm-hmm.
he would just tell me a number, and I'd throw a number on it. So uh, I'd put like a 1 on this one, and then he would just mentally store that in his head or whatever like that. Then I'd bust out another one and put it in place. Of course, I'd have to take it out of take the chassis out of the box. That's after I put the chassis back in. No, I think I just left them out of the box and set them on the floor there. Then get the next one up there and do the same thing with it, and exactly the same thing. Run it through the variac, run it down to
Mm-hmm.
about the variac down to about 98 volts. Jack up the bias, and then he would blow through that and give me a number. I'd put a number on it, and then put that one down, and then do the same thing again. So we would do this dance all the time with the heads that I would find out there, and then me and Jose would work on to get them up and running to where they're solid and good, and so on and so forth, and then over to Ed's, and then do the dance with this, and then at the same time, Ed says he wanted me and Jose to start thinking about building from scratch a 5150 head, because that's what Ed named his studio, was 5150, and he got that from it's the Beverly Hills police code. Say if a cop's driving around and they spot somebody on the side of the street, the cop would call it, oh, we got a 5150 on the loose, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe it means like a crazy son of a gun running around, or out of control individual, or something along that line. And
Yeah.
so anyway, he named his studio 5150. uh then he wanted to name his head, that me and Jose are designing and building from scratch, 5150. And then ironically enough, that was going to be the title of the record, 5150.
Yep. And he
So
had a guitar
anyways,
too. He had
oh,
a
oh
Kramer
yes, yeah, yeah,
guitar,
yeah,
his
exactly.
main one.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So anyways, uh as I could tell you about the amp that me and Jose built. I mean, I hand formed the chassis, hand bent the metal, hand
Mm-hmm.
drilled all the holes for the controls, the inputs, the output jacks, hand drilled all the holes for the tube sockets, preamps, outputs, and then also for the caps. You know, they needed a hole in the chassis, then drill the holes to hold the output and the input transformer and the choke, and you know, on and on and on. It was just, you know, it was all hand drilled. You know, so anyways, I'm sorry to get off topic here. So what ended up happening is we had some without me having to take away from his uh, the heads, the 12 heads that we carried on tour. We had some backup heads that we could use at the studio, right?
Mm.
And so some of the heads, as he would say to me, goes, "So, well, take this one out. I want you to take this one out and this one out, and swap it with, say, this one or this one in the flag racks, and then bring those other ones back and just put them upstairs." You know, and so I did that. So there was only once or twice I think of, maybe three times. You know, even though you're in the heads are in a flag, uh, two space. I mean, to hold those heads, you know, two head space rack. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't very well padded. You know, like with a big giant foam, 2-inch foam cushion around them. So they, you know, as you're rolling them to the truck, in the truck, out of the truck, up the ramp to the stage, and or into my guitar pit or whatever like that. You know, with stage hands helping you roll them. You know, they're not as uh, what do you call it? Delicate with them. Let me say that. You know,
Mm.
sometimes they would lose, the rack would fall over. You know, bam! What's that? I turn around, I go, what the hell's going on over there? You know. And so, anyways, so that's when I was able to go from one head to another head instantly, you know. And a good buddy of mine, Bob Bradshaw, was the guitar tech for the band Toto. And also, so he worked with me on developing Edward's rack. I made every single wire that went in that rack. And Bob Bradshaw, what we did for the main heads, we're running them on a lower voltage. They had to go through a variac, and then what they would do is the output of the head, whatever head that was selected that we plugged into. You know, you had to do that hardwire. Then that would come back and run into would actually run into a what I call a dummy load. You know, so that dummy load, which I don't know if anybody, you'd have to be somewhat of a little bit understanding of electronics, but then the dummy load was used to feed a mixer in the rack, which fed through his electronics. You know, in the rack, there's the delays, his harmonizer, and then it would come out powered by H&H MOSFET amplifiers. You know, I had like a little rack of those that because you had satellite speakers placements around the stage built into the set, you know, and you'd usually have three cabinets. Also, out of that head, we were able to take a what I called a dry line. It just went straight from the head to the center cabinet. So you had center cabinet right behind him was dry,
Mm-hmm.
unaffected, and then it had left and right that were affected. And so we would just dial that in to get the right blend. You know, while he's standing in front of it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, and then we had satellite cabinets, you know, because we had a what do they call it, ego wing on the left and right, and you could go up to the back of around the backside of Alex or so on and so forth. And I'd have these cabinets placed in the grating, either pointing straight up or pointing at them and whatever. So we'd use some of these cabinets. Now, the cabinets that I would pick up also as well, like, ones that had blown speakers. And I had a good relationship with Celestion, so I was able to hand pick. They'd send me like, a bunch of speakers that I could hand go through. Me and Jose would hand go through these speakers and meter them out, and just we found that the best speakers that were from Celestion were from England, and I think it was like, I don't know if it was Ipswich or Lipswich, or I can't remember the damn town, but this these ladies that would cone these speakers, put the cones in, were these old kind of ladies. I mean, at the time I was in my 20s, but I'm saying old, not that old. I mean, they might have been in their 40s or something, but they were the experts. So if you got a speaker from Celestion, you wanted it to come from where these gals had did the conage, because they did the best work. So anyways, once we found a good set of speakers, we'd try different boxes. Maybe some boxes would have 75-watt speakers in them. Because when you're on deck and you want to be able to, you want those cones moving. You know what I mean? You want them pushing, and as much wattage as you can give them without blowing them up, right? So usually we'd have like the dry up the middle would be one that we hand selected with the 75-watt speakers, and then left and right affected behind him would be like, say, I can't it might have been, no, it might have been 30-watt greenback Celestions in on the left and right, and then some satellite stations where I call satellite, placements in the set to the left and the right. I'd load up with, say, 65-watt speakers, which are great sounding speaker. I mean, I don't know how many people are have a good ear enough to be able to distinguish, like, say, if they left their Marshall headset at the same settings and interchanged speaker cabinets, you would be able to hear a different tonality out of some of these speakers, And so anyway, so we would do all these at the house and at Jose's and all that stuff. I'd call it speaker detail, Same thing, in and out with different speaker cabinets, so on and so forth, and everything. No matter if you look at the housing of the speaker, it could have been the early ones were made with birch and what I call birch backed, and the newer ones today are all this what do you call it? Press board, or what do they call it, particle board. But sometimes some of the particle board ones sounded tonality, had a really nice, they could really push the tone, you know what I mean? Like if you didn't have any speakers in there and you just the back lid was on and you just stuck your head up to the grill cloth and just went like, hello, or whatever, you would hear that tone of that cabinet. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but
oh yeah.
anyways, so some of these cabinets, and since I bought the cabinets, I got a good deal on them, and the speakers were gifted to me through my deal that I had with, even though they knew I was with Van Halen, they wanted him to stick with Celestion speakers, of course. Oh, wait a minute, my screen just went off again. Okay, probably because I'm not. All right, so anyways, so then what I would do, he'd say, yeah, bring this one out, So when I would bring one out to put into this position or whatever, then I had to take the other one back. You know what I mean? And I usually would take the 4x12s and of his and put them back in the locker in Burbank. So he was basically running with some of my boxes out there, some of my boxes in the 5150 studio, and some of my heads, which I call mine because I'm the one that bought them. Me and Jose repaired them. Ed blew through them, played through them. But when he came out to it with his years later, when he came out, when we were done figuring out the 5150 head, and we got the 5150 going into production, so then we had to bring all this other stuff uh, out of the mix. You know what I mean? Back to
Mm-hmm.
the locker, and I said, "Well, shit, I'm not going to put my stuff that I paid for." So Ed says, "Yeah, get your stuff, and you have to put it at your house." So it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? And I got this little apartment, and actually I had a couple of them there, but anyhow, so I had, just Marshalls everywhere, and heads. He still kept some of my heads in the studio, so we didn't have to break apart, you know, his stuff that we needed to stay with the gear that goes on the road. So I know that was a short story about this situa. So let's just scroll down. So these are all great stuff. And I remember these cabinets, hand selected speakers, hand wired by me, not no clips, hand wired. And so those are very nice if somebody wants a good cabinet, if you know which one you like. If you like vintage 30s or 65s or 75s, and maybe a heavy metaler or something like that would rather have the 75 waters. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but for more tonality, you would want them to play through the cabinet loaded with the 65 waters. And if you're really, that's what Edward learned going forward was the smaller wattage speakers sounded browner to him, sounded nicer, especially in recording, so on and so forth. And we just had to learn how to deliver those to I think today, if I'm not mistaken, are after me. He was down to, I believe, playing. I think Celestion did a special Eddie Van Halen speaker, and I believe I want to say at 20 watts.
Hmm.
So, you know, and that's what with his 5150 heads uh, were blowing through. And I believe this. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I believe from what I gather from the grapevine, I know that I think at that particular time, it might have been Craig Oler was his guitar tech, which at one point in time he was a bass tech. He took over for Kevin Dugan when uh, Kevin Dugan had some kind of an emergency issue or whatever like that. Craig fielded for him, and then after me, and then whoever was after me was probably Maddie, and then after Maddie it was somebody else, and after somebody else was somebody else, and then after that I think it was I call him his nickname is Datehead. Where that name came from, I have no idea, but I just call him Datey or whatever. But his real name is Craig Oler, and I think he's currently out taking care of Guns N' Roses. He's out there taking care of Slash. Has
Oh,
been for
cool.
some time. But anyways, so let's scroll down here. So basically, I got my stuff back when all the 5150 stuff came out to be loaded up into the flag cabinets and all that sort of stuff. So I got my stuff back. And then Ed would, when he come over to my place, what do you think he wants to do? I just, was in the area. I figured I'd come over, which turned out to be almost every day for for a while. Then Luke would come over, or those two would get together at Ed's studio, or my place, or Neil Sean would be hanging out at my place, blowing through some of this stuff, and you know. So basically, once these guys started, it's hard to get them to stop and give me a break. You know what I mean? I know you guys are having fun, but geez, the reason I got out of this living with Edward was so I could have my own serenity, you know, and which is like it doesn't matter. You learn real quick. It doesn't matter. That ain't gonna happen in rock and roll. You know,
So
it is what it is. So let's go down to. That's enough
so
about those. All the great. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so when they would come over though and jam and write and everything, would you end up like jamming with them and or teching and
Sometimes, yeah, of course. If it was just Ed and me, it would just be, me and him playing. And
hmm
of course, who the hell am I? I'm no Eddie Van Halen, and it's a great compliment where he'd show me what to play and how to play it, and it would just say, just keep on doing this, keep on doing this, focus, concentrate, just keep on doing this, and then he would just start busting out with just incredible riffs and ideas that would come to him, and he'd always say, "What do you think of that one?" I go, everything. When every time he asked me that question, it was like 10 thumbs up. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, everything that I'd never heard him not play anything exciting or valuable. He just had that gift. He felt relaxed. Of course, we'd have had a couple beers and a couple cigarettes and so on and so forth, and everybody's feeling good. But all right, so let's get back to this other little. That's enough about the Marshalls. So those are good, solid pieces, and I should believe that if anybody opened up the backs, I usually would sign them when I'd hand wire them and solder the speakers in place. If they should have that on there somewhere or another. Uh, I think I did that on all the ones that he used, and it should. Yeah, see, it should
hmm
be that. See, that's me right there. And if you see the wiring, I didn't use the original Marshall wiring. I used some good copper gauge
nice.
wiring. So it was pretty plush.
hmm
It ain't gonna fall. The clips ain't gonna fall off or nothing like that. It's it was done the way it should be done. It should have been done in the first place. So, anyways, and then I
Nice.
always had carried with me when I moved down there and got my own place. I eventually went up there, or had I had some stuff in a storage locker there that I had to either put it on the back of some other truck, either with sound image that might have been up in the area, or if one of our trucks were in the area, or whatever, to bring down some of my stuff. And this was uh, a Sears Silvertone amplifier that I got when they first came out, going from switching over from tubes. Uh, Let me see what that says on here. Let me see. I got to scroll down a little bit. Let me see if it says any information on this. I think I just have to. How do I do it to see what it says about it? What do I push? Oh wait, nope, I didn't do that. That didn't work.
If you
Well,
just scroll down,
I guess I can't do it on a computer. I don't think there's a way to do it on a computer. Uh, I don't think so.
hmm,
Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. Wait a second here. I might have just figured out. Okay, I see. You learn something. You learn something new every day. That just goes to show you. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it does say some stuff on here. Now I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I think I might have told, uh, what's his name, Jock. It's either Jock or yeah, Jock
hmm
Van Gool, which is
hmm
the guy that him and his wife, I think Kelly. I think they, from what I understand, I think they're the ones that came to my house initially because they happened to be in the area when all this thing unfolded to see what I had. And I told them the story about that head and that cabinet there because it had a unique sound. And Edward would always look for, as he's creating these songs, and he's always looking for a different kind of maybe a sound or a different kind of effect or a different setting for the harmonizer, or whether it be more dry or more wet, or have an echo on it, or run it through a wah pedal, or this or that or whatever. And he had this idea. Him and Sammy had this idea for the song, and I want to believe it was "Finish What You Started." Dun 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 dun. Does that sound like it's the right song?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
All
it.
right, so he had me pull down a regular Strat from the guitars room that I built upstairs of where I lived at 5150. That's attached to the same building. That was my workshop up there. And so I can't remember what year the Strat was, but it wasn't a new one by any means. It was a classic, good playing Strat,
Mm-hmm.
and so we do the dance every time for a song. He'd want to try different tonalities, uh, but they were close. Like you had your Marshall vibe, then you had your Marshall vibe on 11, then you had your Marshall vibe on about 8, and then you had your Marshall vibe on 11 blowing through 75 waters, and you had your, down to 65 waters, down to maybe 30-watt greenbacks, and then we try other little. He said, "What else you got up there?" And I said, "Well, I hope you don't mind, but I didn't have room to put some of my stuff that I brought at my little apartment there because it was just a little tiny little thing. And I said, well, I've got my 60s Silvertone uh, upstairs. I said, it's pretty unique sounding. It's kind of like a twangy kind of thing. And he goes, yeah, grab that, bring that down here. So I did. And so I'm going up and down the stairs carrying these amps and cabinets all the time by myself. And trust me, it ain't no easy task, but I was able to. I was younger and a little bit more gung ho at the time, I guess. I don't know. I found the strength somehow or another. And
Mm-hmm.
so he'd plug in the Strat to that. He goes, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool." And now then I'd have other chores to do. Either go back to Don Landy's, not Don Landy's, but uh, Jose Arredondo's, and finish working on, put some time in on the head, or whatever. I was always running back and forth, or go fetch hot dogs, or go fetch a
Mm-hmm.
barbecue from Hoggly Woggly Barbecue, or go get us a pizza or something like that. You always had something to do. It's just like as soon as you got done with one thing, okay, now whether I'd be sent by Alex or Mikey or Sammy or Eddie, or take my car over to Claudio's, my Countach or my Mura, it needs a tune-up or whatever like that. But be careful, don't be crashing it. And I said, well, of course not, and I'd be
Mm-hmm.
scareder than shit to drive those cars, because those cars were very, very expensive cars. And I know that even I would take to do the same thing with Sammy. I think would have his Daytona Ferrari, and I'd take that over to Claudio's. And I remember one time I had to pick up his Daytona out there at Malibu Beach. He said, "Bring it into Claudio's. It needs a little adjustment, or whatever like that." And of course, the time of day that I'm out there to grab the car and bring it back, it's a hot day, and the traffic is like a parking lot, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I'm like, inching forward, inching forward. I think it was on the not the 405. It was it might have been. I can't remember
Mm-hmm.
which one. But anyways, the car started overheating. And by the time I get to Claudio's, Claudio comes out there and he sees steam coming out the front of his Daytona. And Claudio goes, well, Zeke, what did you do to Tammy's car? You know? And I said, hey, it was the traffic, You're not supposed to drive when you see steam come out of the car. And so I'd go, well, shucks, I wish somebody would give me these instructions beforehand. Or why did you send one of your guys to go get the car? Why do all of a sudden I'm the guy that I was scared to do it in the first place? And so Sammy, I get back to the 5150 there, and Sammy goes, Claudio called me and said that my Daytona, you overheated my Daytona. I hope the engine's fine. And I'm just thinking, dear Lord, please, please don't do this to me. Come to my Savior here. Please let that motor. I wouldn't even have an idea if he had to replace a motor. I'm sure I'd be working for the next 5 years with zero salary to replace something like that. But anyway, so back to this. So as I'd be out and about there, I know that he blew through it. Whether or not Don Landy used any of it, on the track, but I think it was uh, recorded with that, at least the rhythm part of it, because you could tell if you listen to that song and say you listen to a few of the other songs on there, you could definitely tell a difference between a Marshall and this amp had a lot of punch to it, but it had a great tonality to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually used. That amp was actually used. I used that on when I moved to Tennessee. I used that with Clint Black and some of his recordings. Country stuff. They got a kick out of that too.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's been around a long time. It's got to be 65 or 70 years old, almost my age.
Dang.
It just goes to show you. At least it was still working the last time I blew through it. So let's enough about that. Now, how do I get back to the original? Oh,
Click your
okay. I
back.
see. I see what I got to do. I got to go to this again. See if that does it. All right. So now I think we're back in business here. Let me see if it scrolls down. Boy, we really are moving along fast on this, aren't we? Goodness
Lot of
gracious, you're probably thinking that I hope the rest of this ain't good, that we'll be here for a month. Uh, all right,
lot
so
of
here
great great
let's
stuff.
give a okay. Now we're getting to the guitars. All right, so the deal was I had worked with Edward previously to come into Los Angeles because he asked me to come down to L.A. and be his guy, full time guy
Mm-hmm.
and live with. I said, well, I don't have any place to stay. And there's a story behind that. I wish I could tell, but I from up there in the Bay Area there, I was. I don't know if I should tell this story. It involves a relationship. I worked really hard on trying to get a relationship with this woman. Uh, and just when just got the relationship started is when Ed called me and says, hey, can you come down to LA, move down to LA? So, of course, I was like, yep, I'm coming. And so, anyways, that's just life. Life
Mm-hmm.
moves along. So, anyways, so down there, and then he goes, well, let's see what you're all about, really. Let's see what you got, you know. So he brought these a bunch of parts and boxes and just you know parts and boxes. Let's see if he can build me something that's as close to his 5150 And of course, we had some extra decals there, so we wanted to make it as close. And there was two different necks. There was a rosewood neck and a maple neck. So I started with the first one I did was the maple neck one, and with the Floyd Rose. And so I built this thing, put it together, and I'd get close to it. He kept on coming up there and into the my little workshop bench area because I took over Valerie's. Uh, she had a what do you call like a upstairs first. It was like there was glass on all the walls and it had poles going sideways in there, like what a ballerina would use or somebody doing ballet would use to practice dance or whatever she did. But and I lived at the bottom of the stairs, and on the couch there, the pull-out couch, and I never did see her go up there. So I just told Ed, I said, I need a place to operate. And so he goes, well, just go upstairs, add some benches. I said, I'm gonna have to take down some of the mirrors and build some shelves and get a bench up there and blah 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 blah. So that's what I did. So, anyways, it would be the same thing. I bet I was up and down them stairs at my time there at least 40 times a day, if not more. You know what I mean? Run up and get this guitar, run up and get that, or here. I'd bring the guitar down and I had to would hand sand. I'd have to hand sand that neck in certain areas to where it felt right for him. Because that's what he did on his. You know what I mean? So I'm constantly sanding the backside of that, then to sand a little bit, because you don't want to do too much, because you go too far, then you're like, the game's over, So that's what he had said, is sand a little bit at a time and take a little bit off of here and then run it back down to me. Let me check it out real quick. And then he go, yeah, that's getting there. He goes, take it back up there and sand a little more here or there, So I go, all right, we'll go up there and sand a little bit more. So
Because
did that dance.
he would want the wear of like the guitar that he was already playing. He would want the wear.
No, it was the feel of the neck, with his hand around it, because even though when they make those necks, whatever they do, whether they originally sent them to Edward from Kramer on however they were made off a machine or whatever like that, no wood's going to be the exact same. It's not going to be. I don't care if you out of the same tree, you got 20 necks out of the same tree, from where that neck came out of that part of the tree, it's going to sound different than a little higher up the tree or you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, even though they're close, or it could have come from a different tree, or who knows, but anyways, so that it also hand worked the frets a little bit, and that's a very delicate situation there to work the frets, because he had me, I had like a long flat edge, and you could kind of set it on its edge, the flat edge on top of the frets, and he would say, I want you to take a little, on his, he said I had to take a little off of here and there, or whatever, and to make it feel right for his technique and his tapping style, and, so it all made sense to him. So it was a lot of work, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, same thing. So that was the first one. And what we would do, what was incredible, and of course he'd play it, compare it, A-B it, switch up the guitars, going through the different heads when I bring down different heads or different cabinets, just always, constantly, changing things up. And I felt like saying one time, I said, man, I think the one that you got and the head that you're playing through and the cabinet you're playing through, I think it sounds perfectly fine to me. Do you really want to do this whole dance again? Up and down, drag this, take that, fetch this, fetch that, because it's wearing my ass out, to be honest with you. I never did say, aren't you ever satisfied with what we got? Because it's real good. It's sounding real good to me. I don't think the record's broke here, my friend. But that was a situa that I had to deal with. So anyway, so let me get back on to this a little bit. So that was put together, I believe it was in '86. Now then he said, like, he goes, hey, I would, get that rosewood one happening, put that one together, put the rosewood one together. So then it's the same dance again, up and down. And I said, well, back and forth, back and forth. And then when I got that one to where it was like acceptable to him, which again, it wasn't like, big figure each one is probably up and down them stairs, probably 200 times. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then it would get to the point where it would just be me and him hanging out, after everybody went home. And of course, I was hoping that Edward would go in the house and hang out with Valerie or whatever like that, to give me a little peace so I could take a nap or just like rest my muscles. And then he would say, come on, Zeke, let's come out there, grab those two guitars, come out in the studio. And so I would, and we each would plug into a head, and we'd sit in these folding chairs, because if you're going to sit down and play a guitar, you got to be able to have, you can't have a chair that has those, what do you call it, those little armrests on it. You got to be able to be free to move with that
Mm-hmm.
guitar and so on and so forth. So he would sit directly across from me, and we'd fire him up, and then Ed would say, "Work with me for a few minutes." He goes, "This is what I want you to play, Zeke, and play it exactly." And he's tapping on my foot with his foot on the top side of my foot for the beat. And then he'd say, "Just play this." He'd show me a little chord progression, or do this thing 10 times, then go do this for 5 times, and go back do the other thing for 10 times, and don't stop. Just do it as I'm showing you how to do it, right? And I said, oh, okay. So then I'd do that, and he's tapping on my foot, and then he starts just busting out, with creating some of his music, and it just was just incredible. I mean, this is coming out of him. Now, what I don't know, if he was inside of his house the night before and sitting with the guitar. He always had a guitar in his hand. Every time you seen him walking around the 5150 there, coming from the front house to the studio, he's always got a guitar. I've never hardly ever seen him without a guitar, unless he was eating some barbecue or outside having a cigarette. But most of the time when he was having a cigarette, that cigarette was stuck in the headstock anyway. You know what I mean? Sometimes that one would still be burning, and he'd light up another one. But anyhow, so we'd sit across from each other. He's tapping on my foot, and he's starting to whip this stuff off. And then I would lose focus, I guess, or concentration, because I would basically just be in awe of what he's putting down. You know what I mean? I mean, just like, I'm like, but I'm still trying to, I'm just like, nobody guitar player, right? And, but he goes, I showed you how to do it. Just, here, I got to get a drink of water. Just do it like I showed you. Pay attention.
Yeah. And so you're trying to remember what he showed you to play, and you're trying to play it, but at the same time, you're
Yeah,
watching him not believing what you're seeing.
exactly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what a dilemma that was. And so I would see, the first couple times I would screw up. He goes, "Come on, Zeke, you got this. Just do it, man. You feel my foot tapping on your foot." I said, "Of course I do." Uh, so then we'd start up again and start going. I'd get a little further, and then I'd screw up again. And then all of a sudden, he would take the back of his hand, like, the back of his hand like this, and smack me right about here in my chest, just like wham, like, right in my chest. Come on, Zeke, pay attention. Focus here. It's not rocket science. And I'm thinking, like, in a way, it is. You're trying to uh, play along with the best guitar player on the planet, and I'm not in his league or whatever. But he did teach me a lot. I mean, we did this a lot of times. Hours on end. To where by the end of the night, when he'd finally be tired, I said, "Come on, Ed, I think it's time to hit the hay here, don't you think? It's getting kind of late." And he said, "Yeah, I guess so." So then he would walk out and go up to the front house there and go to bed, and I would get ready and do my little cleanup and shower, put on my jammies, my sweatpants or whatever it was, and every time I took off my shirt, I'd see a big old red welt on my chest, kind of like a bruise. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if you ever been backhanded before with a little bit of force right in the and it wasn't like a punch. It would just be a backhand, right into your to your chest there. Trust me, he could leave a mark. So anyway, so you learn you don't want to get hit anymore, and it was just to get me, because sometimes I would lose track. I'd just be in awe of him and just like what he's doing, you know. And he just wanted me to just pay attention, just do this over and over again. That's all I'm asking you to do. Just play this stuff like I'm showing you over and over again, and don't ask no questions, and don't stop, don't mess up, and like that. So that was memories that I'll never, ever, ever forget.
Wow.
And I mean, think about it. What a blessing. I mean, I was just on like I'm in a different planet or something. I mean, to have that opportunity as part of my job or what he wanted me to do, as he's sitting there with them, and as he's creating these songs, and of course my humor. I've always had this. How about you now? Or we got a major situation, or but or different lines that I've come up with over the years, and he would uh, come back at me like that, start using them on me, So I thought that was kind of cool. It's kind of trading off. I don't know if it's trading off, but just complimenting one another, I guess, in a certain way. All right, so we're moving rapidly along here.
Well, one more question. I have a question. So you
Yeah.
guys would do this at the studio. You guys would do
Yes.
this at 5150, and then
And
say like,
then when I think I could escape after I moved out of there, because I had to get my own space, I wouldn't get no rest. You know, I wasn't getting no rest. I mean, a guy's got that's doing all the chores and running all the errands and carrying shit up and down the stairs 100 times a day and over to Jose's and back, and uh, you know, I had no personal time when I could. If Ed would go out, the only time I would have some kind of personal time is if Ed would bust out and go to Malibu. Valerie says, "Come on, I want you to come out to Malibu this weekend. We're gonna just hang out or do whatever," because he was always in the studio. So when he'd bust out to Malibu, then of course I would bust out of 5150 there, and my favorite place to go to was the Rainbow on the Sunset Strip, you know, and I'd hang out with Lemmy. Lemmy would always be there on this little kind of like a not some kind of a slot machine or a bar type gambling machine. It wasn't like a Vegas machine, but it kind of looked like that. I don't know if it was like you had to get three of a kind or whatever it was. He would be in there hanging out, and then also John Entwistle. Me and John were pretty good friends. We dabbled in quite a few different things together, and I can't really talk about that situation too much. But so here I am hanging out with some of the best coolest bass players. And then who else? Who else joins the little team of hoodlums there? Is nobody other than Billy Sheehan.
Oh.
And so, anyways, at the time when I'd sit at the bar there, there was the bartender back there. Her name was Eileen, and beautiful, beautiful gal, of course, you know. And so I'd be in there and, you know, just, having drinks and Lemmy would be playing his thing here and Entwistle would be hanging out next to me. And as I'm trying to like, have conversation with Eileen, and then Billy would do the same thing. He would like, so you could tell what both of uh, our interest was like, oh geez, I wonder who's going to succeed and then taking her out on a date or something, which I never did. I take that back. I think one time, I think we were playing at the Forum or something like that, that I think I had her as a guest to the show. But she just came to the show and hung out for a little bit and then busted out, got out of there. But never, nothing ever happened with. It was just good friends, great gal. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I got off on that sideways situa. But anyways, let me scroll down here. Is that the question you were asking, or did I
Wow.
just go off on a whole new tangent?
Well, I mean that was awesome. But my question was, so you guys would play these guitars, you guys would jam out
Yes,
at
yes, yes,
5150, and then I've seen
yes,
footage of you guys jamming like at sound checks, like on 5150 tour and stuff.
yes. That happened too.
Like you're playing like Sammy's guitar
Yeah, and me
and
and Eddie would just do stuff, and then believe it or not, by me not being a, uh, I mean, Edward would show me how to do the licks, show me how to tap. He'd show me how to do
hmm
this, and I'd watch him like a hawk. Why would you not when you had the opportunity to? And so I would just like come up with, he would come up with stuff that made sense. You know what I mean? Like
hmm
like songs or beginning to end that made sense, that actually said something. Toward the shit that I would come up with made no sense. It made no sense so much that he would sit there, look at me, and go like, "Well, that's different. That's weird. Where'd you get
I
that from?"
saw
Or, you know what I
I
mean?
saw footage.
And then he would like pick up on that later on, and then create some take out from my nonsense, and he would make something out of it. And so I could at least testify and say that, well, I did contribute a tiny little bit, you know.
hmm
Uh, but anyhows, should
Yeah,
we move? Go
yeah,
ahead.
but I've seen footage of you guys like sound check, and
Oh
you're like
yeah,
showing him something, and he's watching you trying to figure out what you're playing.
that's what I'm talking about.
I've seen that. Yeah.
He's watching pretty much an idiot make a fool of himself, throwing down a bunch of garbage that makes no sense. So picture that, if you will.
You sounded great though, man.
But we would groove for a long time. We did that a lot. And
hmm
so, anyways, that's also. And then Alex would kick in, and Mikey would get out there and he'd throw in too. And
hmm
so here I find, and when you think about it, you know, uh, I could safely say in a court of law that yeah, in fact, I did have a chance a couple, two, three times there to where I got to play with Van Halen, you know,
hmm
because it's true. Now, whether or not it sounded like my part sounded like probably sounded like complete chaos, but at least I could say uh, I did it. I was able to
hmm
did it, and so how fortunate. That's just another blessing as far as I'm concerned.
hmm
So, anyways, let's scroll on down here. Let's blow through those. Okay, here's a good one here. This is a good one. So I don't constantly go through watches, as I'm picture me carting up these by myself, carting up and down the stairs 4x12 cabinets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or amp heads. And those Marshall heads, trust me, they weigh a lot. I don't know how much exactly what their weight is, but they're heavy, you know. And those cabinets are, especially the 75 waters, are heavy, you know. Uh, but anyways, so I'm always breaking a watch, and Ed would say, "Come get me at 3." He's got some kind of a call he's got to make. He said, "Come get me at 2 o'clock," or I gotta remind me I gotta go somewhere at 10 o'clock, or whatever. So the time that I was supposed to tell him to go do this or that or whatever he wanted me to do it, he'd go. I'd be upstairs either soldering a speaker in a cabinet or something like that. Yell upstairs, goes, "Zeke!" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Weren't you supposed to tell me something?" And I'd say, "Uh." Yeah, yeah, I guess so. You mean to tell you when it was a certain time?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What time do you think it is?" And I'd look at my watch, and it would be broken. It wouldn't be working. You know what I mean? Probably stuck on the
Mm-hmm.
same time for an hour. So he would miss this thing that he was supposed to go to, whether it be an appointment or something like this, or something. I'm not sure. I'd try not to ask him his every move, like, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" Because if I figured if I would ask, then he would say, "You're coming with me," or make me have to go with him. You know what I mean? If I'm right in the middle of something, because it's not like I'm not doing errands from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. It's like errands, running around up and down the stairs, soldering this, soldering that, taking this apart, putting it back together, building this, building that, over to
Mm-hmm.
Jose's, fixing this, working on the head, back and forth, back and forth. So it's like nonstop, you know. So, anyways, getting back to this, so he goes, "We're going to fix that right now." So uh, he got me this 1988, this Rolex Submariner, and had it engraved on it. It should have my initials on there somewhere, or it should say something on the
Mm-hmm.
inside with the logo, or I can't remember. But I
Mm-hmm.
wore that. It should be. I don't know if you could focus in on it. Yeah, you could see, like,
Yeah.
you could see the VH uh,
The VH
logo
logo.
there, and it's got my name on that one, and it should be maybe somewhere, I believe, because he's given me several watches. Yeah, I don't think it's that one, because I remember he engraved EVH on one of the watches. I think it was a gold watch. That's the Rolex one there. That's it's and I wore the shit out of that watch. That watch lasted a long time. There might be a little tiny scratch or something uh, on the what do they call that? The bezel, the glass part,
Mm-hmm.
and the band might be scuffed up a little bit. You could see it's been very well worn. So that was a very nice thing here. I'm surprised. I thought I sent him my gold watch. I have a gold. Wonder why they don't have that up on this marketplace here or whatever. Uh, Hopefully
We
nobody
can
took it.
we can look
But
for it later.
anyway, so that was very nice. And then the ring, if we scroll over to so that's a good deal. So if you look at the thing, current bid $8,000 for that watch. If you bought a Submariner Rolex watch at that time, at that quality, they were more than 8 grand with no provenance to them. You know what I mean? Even I bet if you try to find one today, I mean the box alone, the I'm talking the box it came in, the original box, right? You can't even find an original box with no watch in it, but just have that has the paperwork alone, because somebody wanted to offer me like $1,200 to $1,500 just for the box. I said, "You got to be kidding me." So those boxes alone, if you could find one for that year or that period, just the box alone goes for like a grand or two. And then when you throw the cost of the Rolex, those go for about easily 8 grand, if not more. I mean, I haven't looked at what a Rolex costs today in a long time, but I bet it's more. So
Hmm.
anyway, so that's a good deal, and it's got the Van Halen insignia on there, and I think it's got my name Zeke in there somewhere.
Hmm.
But all right, so anyways, so let's continue on. We're over to the ring. Let me tell you this story here. All right, so you see that logo there. Actually, the better logo, if you could somehow or another focus more so on the last item, the watch, right? And if you could try to focus in on the inner side of that watch, if you, I don't know if it shows a picture of the actual inscription or whatever it is, but if you could really focus that in, can you focus any more?
Yeah,
But
that's as
if
far as
if
it
you
goes.
guys can tell, it's the Van Halen logo that is all the way around. It goes all the way
Hmm.
around. You know what I mean? It's like an oblong.
They
Uh,
call it rings. They call it the Van Halen ring logo.
okay, well, thank you for sharing that with me. I'll be sure
Hmm.
to put that in my diary as soon as I get off the phone. Uh, anyways, let's. All right, now let's go back to the ring, and this is what I'm leading up to here. All right, so we had the best pyro guy in the business. I mean, the godfather of pyro. His name is John Watkins. This guy is just like what I say as a compliment. I say this guy's the bomb. You know,
Hmm.
uh, just hard working, one of the hardest working people I've ever seen, and hands on and puts on a show. So we had on this tour, he built a giant that he had to put together circular backboard that went behind the band. You know what I mean? And pyro would come out of it, sparklers, like it would rain sparklers, and then the same thing on the at the stadiums on the left and the right towers. And he rode on the backline bus with us too. It was me, Kevin Dugan, and first of all it was Greg Emerson, but he retired. It was Alex's first drum tech. He retired. He's passed away since. But then came Rob Kern, which I called Sheet. God damn, because he's from Switzerland and out frickin' standing drum tech. Rob Kern. I mean, what a great guy. I mean, our team was pretty frickin' stellar, you know. And anyways, so John Watkins comes to me one day and he goes, "Hey, I got a buddy. I'm just trying to. I probably won't be word for word what exactly he said, but it was something to the effect that he's got a friend of his that does makes jewelry, rings and such like that. He goes, I'm wanting him to make me uh, a Van Halen ring." And he showed me a little diagram that he drew up that his friend's going to make. He's going to make it out of solid gold. And he said it. He goes, "Zeke, I thought I'd come to you because, maybe you might want one, because you're around Edward all the time, and it'd be pretty cool to honor him with this ring and such like that." And I said, "Yeah." I said, let me know what kind of price range am I talking here, right? So then he tells me a price range, and so I got to go to Edward. I got to say, hey Ed, John's over there, John Watkins over there. He's got a buddy of his that's gonna make him a ring and me a ring, and this is kind of what it's going to look like, and it's going to be solid gold, and I'll wear it every single day to honor you and like that. And they said it's going to cost this much, and Ed goes, well, that's cool, man. He goes, I'll pay for it as long as you wear it every day. And I said, oh, Ed, are you sure? He goes, yeah, absolutely. He says, but you can't make any more of them. This ain't something that's going to be sold, or you could order on or it sold at any stores. Or I said, oh, no, just these only two. And he said, well, I'll give you guys permission to get these, to have two only, but you got to wear it every day. And I said, I'll never take it off, And so he gifted me that through John Watkins, and the godfather of pyro, you know. Nobody better than John Watkins, I'm telling you. That's a fact, Jack. And he's known around the world. Great guy, super great guy, coolest guy, uh, just a cool guy to be around. A genuine human being, you know. So, anyways, so enough about that. And that one there, they've got it listed for 8 grand. But if you put that on a scale and just for the weight of it alone, I bet it would be, I'm just guessing, I never did do it, but I'm guessing it's at least an ounce. I don't know, maybe an ounce more. Maybe, I don't know. I never did it. That'd be interesting to do, to have somebody weigh that thing. But even gold today, I watched this TV show about these gold miners in Alaska. It's on Discovery Channel or one of those channels, and the season ended a couple months ago. But then I know the price of gold was right around $4,000 an ounce just for you know gold. You know, not shaped in our custom shaped to a ring and whatever. But anyway, so down the road, still communicating with John, he had told me that he either misplaced it or left it at a gig, washing his hands in one of the restrooms, because he gets so dirty, his hands he's just covered in gunpowder, you know. Thank God he didn't smoke cigarettes. I'm telling you that. Uh, but anyway, so I think he said he either left it or lost it. But alls I know is that broke his heart that he doesn't have his anymore, and he doesn't know where it is. If anybody's out there, if anybody knows, if anybody's ever seen a ring like this, please call Johnny Beane. There will be a cash reward, that I'll give you the cash reward for it, so we can get Johnny back his ring. I think that would be the right thing to do. You know what I mean? So we
That'd be
need your.
awesome.
It's like that. I watched that live police patrol on. I can't think of live PD. I think it's called. It's kind of like what
Hmm.
they do. They reach out to their audience. If you see this suspect, if you see this person, call it in, or like
Yeah.
America's Most Wanted, same kind of situation.
Hmm.
But if anybody out there has ever seen anybody wearing that, there's only, please alert Johnny Beane so we can get John back his ring. That would be outstanding.
And
So right now,
his name would be in there too, right? Like yours?
no, no, Edward had this after I got the ring, showed it to him, and he had it engraved for me. I'm surprised he was gonna engrave it with something a little off the wall, you know. Like I thought he was going to put Gunga in there, or Gunga the creator, or just Gunga,
Oh.
you know. you know. But anyway, so that's right now as it exists. It's one of a kind, one of two, but only one that I know of. That's where it is, and of course, you're looking at it on this paper right now. of the screen. But anyways, it would be great if we could get John his ring back. That would be super awesome, you know. But anyway, so let's carry on, my wayward son. Let me see if I can scroll down to the next situa here. Let's see. Am I doing something wrong? Oh, which way do I? How come it's not mine? What am I doing wrong here?
Are
See,
you
you're
zoomed in
dealing.
on the item?
Yeah, but see, on my laptop, you have to. It has a little arrow that where you can put your finger on the square pad, and you can move that arrow around. So if you don't touch that little pad for a while, and you just hit the up and down arrows to the right bottom of the iPad here, I mean, what do we call this? MacBook
Laptop?
laptop.
Oh.
That's it, right? And then you could do it. But if you haven't clicked on that arrow, then it won't do it when you push that arrow. That's what I'm trying to say. The up and
Oh.
down arrows. All right, so these are just basic stuff here. This is like Edward being Edward Van Halen. You know, of course, everybody. I think MXR and Dunlop and same outfit there. They make several different pedals. Would make Edward. You know, not only did he have his guitars, he had his amp lines, his amps, his pedals, everything that had his signature, uh, design on it. And so, what I used to do in the early days, I used to look at his pedals and the couple changes I'd made on it. Actually, I tried to fix a couple pedals, and I ended up putting the wrong uh, little cap in there, or something wrong, and then he'd plug it in, and he goes, "Wow, this sounds great. Wow, what'd you do?" And instead of saying like, "Well, I think I might have put the wrong value resistor or cap in there or something like that. That's the only one I could find," or anyways. And so he would, from that time on, he goes, "Oh, that's kind of cool." He goes, then after I left the camp there and on to my adventures, uh, when I'd see that they would come out with a new situa, like a type of pedal or a wah or uh, flanger or whatever the case may be, uh, they would say, and I call up. I can't remember how it exactly happened. All I know, they were gifted to me. I'd get them in the mail for Zeke, and so I think Edward had to authorize the thing or something. I don't know the exact. Uh, I wasn't there. I just know I'm receiving it, from Eddie through the mail, and then I would check them out and see what I thought of them, like I did everything. I'd put my take on it, but sometimes it just, before I would get to it to suss it out, it would just be sitting on my shelf in my shop, you know, for a month or a week or whatever. Okay, my legs are starting to the fans don't know it out there, but I made a terrible, terrible mistake. I fell off a ladder and fractured my left femur and tore a bunch of muscles in my left thigh. So I've been like, I think I was bedbound for about almost 10 weeks, trying to save $1 instead of paying somebody, because my soffit, the squirrels or raccoons had pulled my soffit down from the second story of my roof up there. So I'm trying to get on a ladder to get up there and push that soffit back in place, and then coming down the ladder, my left leg went numb, and then I took me and the ladder went left and landed on my cement driveway.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so trying to save, instead of paying somebody that to come to your house, and what do you got to give them? What, $200 to get up there and do it? You know, so that cost me a whole lot of pain. I'm still paining from it, you know, because I'd get up wrong or whatever, and all of a sudden I'd re-tear a little bit as it's healing, or do something, you know. So
Yeah.
even sitting in this cozy chair, we should. Well, let's see what we got. Maybe we can blow through this one page real fast here. We got. Are probably bored absolutely to death. Okay.
Hey dudes, thank you so much for watching. We'll continue with Zeke tomorrow, but thank you to our channel members. Thank you guys for your continued support for this channel and these shows. Top tier channel members are the executive producers, and you guys are Michael B. Live, Music Therapy Laz, Majestic PP, NJ Cat, Flipper Carlin, Bay Area Rich, Sherman Callahan, Nova 9 Music, R. Habs, and Janice Lala, the intern. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as I said, we will continue tomorrow with Zeke Clark, talking about the Zeke Clark collection. Some amazing items here. You guys, incredible stuff. Anyway, if you got comments, you got questions on any of this, or just general questions for Zeke, drop them in the comments down below, and we will address those tomorrow. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Here on, what channel is this?
Hey! This is Michael Anthony right here, and you are watching Exclusively Van Halen on the Johnny Beane TV. Keep it there. Woo! See ya!
Thank you so much, Michael Anthony. All right, click on another video on the screen here. As I said, comment below, and we will continue talking with Zeke tomorrow here on Johnny Beane TV.